Richard was a very important man. He had a big office with a great view and lots of people worked for him. He had more money than he could probably ever spend. But even with all of that, Richard was lonely. He lived in a big, fancy house, but it felt empty. He didn't have anyone special to share it with. Richard wasn't mean or anything, he just found it hard to make real friends. People often wanted things from him because he was rich. It was hard to know who liked him for him and not his money. He wished he could find someone who saw past all the fancy stuff. Someone who liked him for being Richard, not Richard the millionaire. He longed for a genuine connection, a true friend, or maybe even something more. He just didn't know where to find it. Soon, Richard had a big problem coming up. The annual company gala. It was a fancy party where all the important people from his company, and even other companies, would come. Richard needed to be there, of course. As the boss, he had to be there. But there was one big thing he needed, a date. It wasn't just about having someone to dance with. It was about appearances. People expected the head of a big company to have someone special with him. It made him look successful, like he had it all together. But Richard didn't have anyone, and he was starting to feel the pressure. The gala was only a few weeks away, and he had no idea who to bring. He sighed, looking out at the city from his tall office building. What was he going to do? Richard thought about his options. He could hire someone, an escort, to pretend to be his girlfriend for the night. But the idea felt wrong. It felt fake and empty, just like he felt inside. He considered asking out some of the women he knew, socialites who went to all the right parties. They were beautiful and knew how to act at fancy events. But they were also usually interested in his money and his status. He didn't want someone who just wanted to be seen with him. He wanted something real. He wanted someone who would laugh at his silly jokes and tell him about their day, not just talk about business deals and fancy vacations. He sighed again. Finding a date for the gala was turning out to be much harder than running his company. Meanwhile, in a smaller office down the hall, sat Sarah. Sarah was Richard's secretary. She was very good at her job. She knew everything about Richard's schedule and made sure everything ran smoothly. She was quiet and a little shy, but very kind. She always had a smile for everyone, even when she was busy. Sarah admired Richard. She thought he was handsome and smart, but she also saw that he seemed lonely. She knew he worked very hard, and she wished he had someone to share his life with. Of course, she never thought she could be that person. She was just his secretary. But she couldn't help but feel a little flutter in her heart whenever he smiled at her or said thank you. She secretly hoped that someday he would see her as more than just a secretary. One afternoon, Richard was working late when he overheard Sarah talking on the phone. He didn't mean to eavesdrop, but her voice carried through the thin walls of his office. She was talking to a friend about classic movies. She sounded so excited and passionate, listing off her favorite films and directors. Richard was surprised. He never knew Sarah was interested in old movies. He always thought of her as quiet and reserved. He had no idea she had such a hidden passion. He himself enjoyed classic films. He suddenly saw her in a new light. She wasn't just his secretary, she was a person with interests and dreams, just like him. He felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in a long time, curiosity. The next day, Richard did something completely unexpected. He walked into Sarah's office and closed the door. Sarah looked up surprised. "Mr. Thompson? Is everything all right?" she asked, her voice a little shaky. Richard took a deep breath. "Sarah," he said, "I have a bit of a situation. You know about the gala, right?" Sarah nodded. "Well," Richard continued, "I need a date, and I was wondering if you would be willing to be my date." Sarah's eyes widened. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Richard Thompson, the millionaire, was asking her to be his date? He quickly added, "I need someone I can trust, someone discreet, and you're always so reliable. No pressure, of course, but I thought." He trailed off, feeling a bit awkward. He hoped he hadn't made a mistake. Sarah's mind was racing. Part of her was screaming, yes. This was like a dream come true. The man she admired, the man she secretly liked, was asking her to be his date. But another part of her was terrified. She was just a secretary. She wasn't fancy or glamorous. What would people think? Would she embarrass him? She swallowed hard. "Mr. Thompson," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, I don't know what to say." She paused, gathering her courage. "Yes," she finally blurted out. "I would love to go to the gala with you." A small smile spread across her face, even though her stomach was doing flip-flops. She was excited but also incredibly nervous. This was going to be the biggest night of her life, and she didn't want to mess it up. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Richard insisted on taking Sarah shopping for a dress. He wanted her to feel confident and beautiful. They went to a fancy boutique and Sarah felt completely out of her element. There were so many sparkly dresses and high heels. She didn't know where to begin. A kind stylist helped her find the perfect dress, a simple, elegant gown that made her feel like a princess. Then came the hair and makeup. Sarah had never worn so much makeup in her life. But when she looked in the mirror, she hardly recognized herself. She looked stunning. Her natural beauty shone through, enhanced by the expert styling. She felt like a completely different person, ready to face the gala. The night of the gala arrived. Richard waited for Sarah in the lobby of her building. When she walked in, he was speechless. He had seen her every day at work, but he had never seen her like this. The dress fit her perfectly, showing off her figure without being too revealing. Her hair was styled in soft waves and her eyes sparkled. He couldn't help but stare. "Sarah," he said, his voice a little husky, "you look incredible." He truly meant it. She was more beautiful than any of the socialites he knew. Sarah blushed, but she met his gaze. "Thank you, Mr. Thompson," she said, "you look very handsome yourself." Richard offered her his arm, and together they walked out into the night, ready to face the gala. He felt a surge of pride to be with her. As they entered the ballroom, Sarah was immediately overwhelmed. The room was filled with people in fancy clothes, loud music, and bright lights. She felt small and insignificant. Richard noticed her discomfort and squeezed her hand gently. "Don't worry," he whispered, "I'm here with you." He stayed close to her, introducing her to people he knew. He explained who they were and made sure she felt comfortable. He even steered the conversation towards topics she knew about, like classic movies. Richard was like a shield, protecting her from the social pressures of the gala. He made her laugh and helped her relax. She started to feel like she could actually enjoy herself. With Richard by her side, the gala didn't seem so scary anymore. As the evening went on, Richard and Sarah found themselves talking more and more to each other and less to other people. They discovered they both loved old musicals and had similar senses of humor. They laughed at the same silly things and found themselves finishing each other's sentences. Richard was surprised by how easy it was to talk to Sarah. She listened intently when he spoke, and she had interesting things to say. She wasn't just a pretty face, she was smart and thoughtful. He realized that he was enjoying her company more than he had enjoyed anyone's company in a long time. He began to see her as more than just his secretary or just a date for the gala. He saw her as a person he genuinely liked and wanted to get to know better. But not everyone was happy about Richard and Sarah's connection. Veronica, a sharp and ambitious businesswoman who had always been interested in Richard, watched them with a jealous glare. She couldn't believe that Richard was paying so much attention to his secretary instead of her. Veronica decided to intervene. She approached Richard and Sarah, a fake smile plastered on her face. "Richard, darling," she said, her voice dripping with sweetness, "I didn't realize you were bringing staff to the gala. How practical." She then turned to Sarah, her eyes narrowed. "Tell me, dear, how does it feel to be playing dress-up for the night? It must be quite a change from taking dictation." She hoped to make Sarah feel small and insecure, but she was about to be surprised. But Sarah, surprisingly, didn't crumble. Looking Veronica straight in the eye, she replied with a calm voice, "Actually, Veronica, I find taking dictation quite stimulating. It requires excellent listening skills and a sharp mind, both of which are essential in any successful business. Wouldn't you agree?" She paused, then added with a sweet smile, "And as for playing dress-up, who doesn't enjoy a little fantasy now and then?" Richard was amazed. He had never seen Sarah stand up for herself like that. He was incredibly impressed by her grace and intelligence. He gave her a subtle nod of approval, which boosted her confidence even more. Veronica, speechless and defeated, huffed and walked away. Richard looked at Sarah with newfound admiration. He was falling for her, and he was falling hard. The next day, Richard couldn't stop thinking about Sarah. He replayed the events of the gala in his head, remembering her laughter, her kindness, and her surprising strength. He realized that his feelings for her were more than just gratitude for saving him from a lonely night. He was genuinely falling in love with her. He admired her genuine nature, her unassuming kindness, and her hidden depths. She wasn't like the other women he knew, who were often focused on money and status. Sarah was real. She was kind, smart, and funny, and she saw him for who he was, not for what he had. He wanted to spend more time with her, to get to know her even better. But he also knew that things were complicated. He was her boss and he was a millionaire. Would she ever see him as anything more than that? Richard wrestled with his feelings. He knew there was a significant power imbalance between them. He was the boss and she was his secretary. Could she ever truly be honest with him, or would she always feel like she had to agree with him because he was in charge? He also worried about his wealth. Would she be interested in him for himself, or would she be attracted to his money and his lifestyle? It was the same fear he had always had, but it felt even stronger now that he was actually falling for someone. He didn't want to hurt her and he didn't want to be hurt. He knew he had to tread carefully. He decided that the best thing to do was to try to get to know her better outside of work in a more casual setting to see if their connection was real. Richard started finding excuses to spend time with Sarah outside of work. He knew she loved books, so he suggested they visit a local bookstore one afternoon. He acted like it was a casual thing, just browsing, but he secretly hoped she would agree. She did, and they spent hours wandering through the aisles, talking about their favorite authors and discovering new ones. He also remembered her love for classic movies, so he invited her to a film screening at a small independent theater. He made sure it wasn't a fancy event, just a low-key evening where they could relax and enjoy the film. He even let her pick the movie. He wanted to show her that he cared about her interests and that he wanted to spend time with her doing things she enjoyed, not just things that were important for his image. As Richard showed genuine interest in her, Sarah began to open up. She started sharing her dreams with him, her wish to write a screenplay, her fear of public speaking, her love for animals. She even told him about her insecurities, her worries that she wasn't good enough or smart enough. Richard listened patiently, offering words of encouragement and support. He admired her vulnerability and her strength. He learned that beneath her shy exterior was a woman with big dreams and a kind heart. He realized that he wasn't just attracted to her beauty, he was drawn to her spirit. The more he learned about her, the more he fell in love. He also shared some of his own struggles, something he rarely did with anyone, showing Sarah that he trusted her too. Of course, not everyone was happy about Richard's growing feelings for Sarah. His friends and colleagues didn't understand why he was spending time with his secretary. They thought she was beneath him, not sophisticated or wealthy enough to be with someone like him. They started whispering behind his back, gossiping about his unsuitable relationship. They warned him that he was ruining his reputation and that he should be with someone who was more his equal. Some even suggested that Sarah was only after his money. Richard was hurt and frustrated by their disapproval. He knew that Sarah was a wonderful person and he didn't care what anyone else thought. But their constant negativity started to wear him down. He began to wonder if they were right. Was he making a mistake? Richard finally reached his breaking point. He called a few of his closest friends and colleagues together for a meeting. He knew he had to set things straight. "I've heard the things you've been saying about Sarah," he said, his voice firm. "And I want you to know that I don't appreciate it." He continued, "Sarah is a kind, intelligent, and wonderful person. And yes, she's my secretary, but that doesn't make her any less worthy of my time or my affection. I care about her, and her happiness is more important to me than my reputation or your opinions. So, if you can't accept that, then I don't need you in my life." He stood his ground, showing them that he was serious. He chose Sarah's happiness and his own feelings over societal expectations and the approval of others. He wouldn't let anyone make him feel ashamed of being with her. Unfortunately, Sarah overheard the end of Richard's confrontation with his friends. She only caught snippets of the conversation, enough to make her heart sink. She heard one of his friends say, "You don't actually like her, do you? You're just being nice because she's your secretary." Sarah's mind filled with doubt. Had Richard only asked her out of pity? Was he just trying to be kind because she worked for him? Was everything she thought they had built together a lie? She felt a wave of shame wash over her. She had let herself believe that a millionaire could actually fall for someone like her. She had been so foolish. Tears welled up in her eyes and she quietly slipped away, determined to keep Richard from seeing her distress. The next few days, Sarah was distant and cold towards Richard. She avoided eye contact, kept their conversations strictly professional, and canceled their planned movie night. Richard was confused and hurt by her sudden change in behavior. He tried to talk to her, but she brushed him off, saying she was busy. Sarah believed she wasn't good enough for him, that she had misread his kindness as something more. She couldn't bear the thought of being with someone who didn't truly love her, someone who was just being nice out of a sense of obligation. She decided that the only way to protect her heart was to distance herself from Richard, even though it broke her heart to do so. It was better to be alone than to be with someone who didn't truly care. Richard was heartbroken. He couldn't understand what he had done wrong. He knew he had to do something to win her back, to show her that his feelings were real. He thought long and hard about what would truly touch Sarah's heart, something that would prove his love was genuine and unconditional. He knew grand gestures and expensive gifts wouldn't work. He needed to show her that he understood her, that he appreciated her for who she was, and that he loved her for her, not because he felt obligated to. He decided he needed to show her, not just tell her, that his feelings were true. He started planning a grand gesture. Something more meaningful than anything he'd ever done. Something that would show his heart. Richard remembered Sarah telling him about her dream of writing a screenplay. So he secretly contacted a local film school and established a scholarship in her name specifically for aspiring female screenwriters. He knew how much she valued helping others and supporting women in the arts. But that wasn't all. He also tracked down the small, independent movie theater where they were supposed to have their movie night. He rented it out for the evening and recreated their planned date, complete with her favorite classic movie playing on the big screen and a bucket of popcorn waiting for her. He even set up a small table with a handwritten note explaining his feelings and asking her to give him another chance. He hoped that she would see that he truly cared about her and that his love was real. Sarah's friend told her about the scholarship, knowing her passion for screenwriting. She was touched and curious. Then she received a mysterious invitation to the small movie theater. Hesitantly, she went, and when she saw everything Richard had done, she was overwhelmed. The movie, the popcorn, the note. It was all so thoughtful and personal. She read his note, and tears streamed down her face. He wrote about admiring her kindness, her intelligence, and her dreams. He confessed that he had been afraid of his own feelings, but that he now knew he was deeply in love with her. She realized that her insecurities had been clouding her judgment, making her doubt his sincerity. She had let the opinions of others and her own fears get in the way of something truly special. Seeing his genuine vulnerability and the lengths he had gone to, she knew she had to talk to him. Richard was waiting anxiously outside the movie theater when Sarah arrived. He saw the tears in her eyes and his heart sank. He thought he had failed. "Sarah," he began, his voice filled with worry. I'm so sorry if I made things worse." Sarah cut him off. "Richard," she said, her voice trembling, "it's not you. It's me. I was so afraid of getting hurt, so afraid that I wasn't good enough for you, that I let my fears control me." She took a deep breath and looked him straight in the eye. "But seeing what you did, it showed me how much you truly care. And I can't deny it anymore. I love you, Richard. I was just too scared to admit it." She confessed her true feelings, acknowledging her fear of vulnerability but declaring that her love for him was stronger. A wave of relief washed over Richard. "Sarah," he said, his voice full of emotion, "I love you too. More than you know." He reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands. "I know it's unconventional and I know there will be challenges, but I want to be with you. I want to spend my life with you." They embraced, finally letting go of their initial reservations and fears. They had overcome the obstacles in their way, the power imbalance, the societal expectations, and their own insecurities. They had found love in the most unexpected place, and they were ready to embrace their unconventional romance. They both knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but they were ready to face it together, knowing that their love was strong enough to conquer anything. Richard and Sarah navigated their new relationship with care and understanding. Sarah eventually found a new job, pursuing her passion for writing while still remaining Richard's biggest supporter. They faced challenges together, proving that their love was stronger than any obstacle. Some of Richard's friends never fully accepted their relationship, but Richard didn't care. He had found true happiness with Sarah, and that was all that mattered. They traveled the world, supported each other's dreams, and built a life filled with love and laughter. They proved that love can be found in the most unexpected places and that it is more important than wealth or status. Richard, the lonely millionaire, had finally found his soulmate in his shy secretary, and Sarah, the unassuming secretary, had found her prince not in a fairy tale but in real life. They lived happily ever after, proving that love truly conquers all.